if you're on one of these profile-based sites, to include dating apps as well, where you know that you're going to be evaluated by whatever information you present, the most efficient way to use it is to design the profile so that you are filtering out the people you don't want to match with. The profile that is optimized for finding your one soulmate is not the same profile that's optimized for getting the most matches possible. When you're in a relationship with someone, sure, they want you to be financially secure. They want you to be interesting. They want you to be intelligent. But those are thresholds for people, and you have to pass every threshold to have that person want to be with you.
Welcome, everybody, to the Robert Meets World podcast, the show where we dive into all manners of the metaphysical to the practical and everything in between. Today, I am thrilled once again to be bringing another guest. His name is Mr. Wes Myers, and he is the co-founder and chief business officer at Keeper.ai. In addition to this, Wes is also an experienced matchmaker and relationship expert, and he's working within Keeper to try and end human loneliness. How is that? Well, according to Keeper, by giving everybody the opportunity to start a healthy, happy family, approaching modern dating challenges through a lens of long-term relationship formation rather than simply casual dating. Keeper uses technology-based matchmaking with human expertise to create meaningful long-term relationships, citing a success rate of approximately 10% from first dates leading to long-term committed relationships. Keeper focuses on long-term marriage-oriented and family formation rather than simply casual-based dating, and is positioning itself as a technology-enabled matchmaking service to aim at helping individuals find love. Wes has also authored a number of thought-provoking articles on the Keeper blog, including the science of dating preferences, the data behind what people want, why you're rejecting your soulmate, you're not a perfect 10, why do people ghost on dating apps, online dating clearly isn't working, and many more. And in this conversation, I hope to discuss with Wes a lot about the modern dating culture, single mishaps, why we get stuck, incentive design in dating apps, and where Keeper and matchmaking kind of fits into all of this situation. So with all of that being said, welcome to the show, Wes.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Welcome, Robert. Well, Robert meets, this is like Wes meets Robert meets world. So hello, Robert. Hello, world. Hello.
We're all meeting the world. I love it. All right. Well, Wes, I want to kind of set the context or the frame here for all the listeners to try and understand what is going on in the world of dating apps and dating and singlehoods. And so I pulled up some statistics here, which I thought were kind of interesting to kind of set the ground framework. According to the Business of Dating Apps report, leading dating apps like Tinder report in 2024, 1.9 billion plus in revenue, 9.6 million active subscribers, 60 million plus active users. Yet, according to a recent Forbes health survey run on about, I think, surveying 1,000 Americans, 79% of Gen Z, 80% of millennials, and 78% of Gen X report dating app burnout. Women spending on average 52 minutes per day and men 49 minutes per day in this survey group, with citing things like failure to connect and feeling disappointed by partners as some of the main, reasons for this burnout. And your blog reveals like a lot of contrarian views around modern dating culture. So I want to start with some of the problems. Your writing suggests that the dating apps and the users themselves are contributing to this broken system. So what's your diagnosis of what's going wrong?
All right, so it's a lot of things, and a lot of them are cultural, and a lot of them are about the dating apps themselves as a solution. People expect now to meet on a dating app or a dating website. It's the primary way people are expecting to meet their spouse, the person they're going to marry. And as a result of that, especially with the younger generations, they're awkward, right? They've had screens in their face. Like, this is not groundbreaking stuff. But people are not meeting in person anymore, right? Like, I mean, they do, but it's not. It used to be, you'd expect to meet your wife at a bar or a function or a wedding or something. And it's interesting now, like, with the expectation that online is where meeting potential spouses happens, there's just so much less of that approaching that happens in the venues that we do still have for that in real life, to the point where it's, men have always felt maybe uncomfortable approaching women, but there's almost a stigma against it now. Because it's just not the expectation, right? Everyone's expecting to meet online. You think about it, if it's 30 or 40 years ago and you meet someone at church, a girl at your church is probably going to have a lot in common with you just for the fact that she's at your church, right? She's from the same community, probably common social ties, obviously somewhat similar religious beliefs and values, most likely. What dating apps do is they just take everybody, they rake up everybody, and they don't learn very much about you, and then they dump you in one bucket and they say, figure it out. And they give you very little information to figure it out on. What I always say is, if a dating app takes less than 10 minutes to sign up for, then it's not probably going to be a very valuable tool for helping you find your wife, or your husband or whoever, right? Because there are a lot of things about you that are going to determine what sort of person you need to end up with, right? A lot of things. And some of them might be very fine personality quirks or values or habits or little idiosyncrasies you have, that are not going to be things that other people pick up on or that you pick up on in other people, even after going on a few dates with them, let alone from a dating profile. So unless you think that your ideal match is a very common person, which nobody thinks that, right? It's like everyone knows it's like a 1 in 100,000 or more thing. It's ridiculous to think that you're going to be able to vet them based on a little profile where they say they like to travel and they like tacos and they have a dog, and it's like, of course that's not working. Of course it's a random person, right? Maybe I've seen their photos, I know if I'm attracted to them, but I can't go on a date with every person I'm attracted to because there's too many of them, and most of them just aren't going to be the right person for me. So it makes sense. I mean, people go on hundreds of dates. I personally have been on more than 100 dates from dating apps, and I have one girlfriend, which is fantastic, but it certainly took a lot to get there.
Yeah, you mentioned in this article this point around rejecting partners and soulmates, this concept of low information versus high information environments, and this idea that, like, you sort of mentioned there's a bio of 500 characters and you only have so much information you can, I guess, cram in that, and then also you have to consider what would you say, the attention span of the other person within that UX design. But I feel like online dating has been around for quite a while. Things like eHarmony, some of these other dating sites. But with, I guess, the evolution of the mobile phone, things really took off in the dating app world. So what changed? Was it the mobile phone? Was it the design pattern of the swiping?
Yeah, I think it's UX is a big part of it. Just the ease of using a dating app, and the swipe was obviously a huge invention. Just the fact that you can go on there and you don't have to read this arduous profile. Like the early dating sites, it was very much like the old classified ads, or if you've ever seen these cheesy, like, in the 1980s, you could go to the mall and sit there and record a video where you're like, I am gainfully employed and I like to play the piano, right? And it was sort of like just a digital version of that, where if someone put effort into it and they really put their best foot forward, they could give you a very high resolution picture of who they are, but it was still going to be idealized, right? No one was saying, I sweat in bed and I hog the covers, right? No one was saying that on their OkCupid profile. But I think a big part of it too is just the normalization of it and more of life moving online. I remember when I was, very young and elementary school, in the early 2000s, adults would be embarrassed to say they met online. It was, I don't know if it was a desperation thing or what, but you would want to come up with like a cover story for how you met. I think people still do that to some extent, but I think that more of our lives moved online. People just started spending more time on social media, and they started getting their news from the phone, and they started doing your life moved on to this phone. And then once that became normalized in every other realm of life, then for dating, it was natural.
Mm-hmm. And how much of like profile and self-branding and image construction do you think has gone into this these changes as well, because in reading some of your articles, I was just thinking about, you mentioned this point around singles being deeply entitled today. And it made me think about this idea of how we construct perhaps online personas. Maybe you have been, I remember the early days of Instagram, and it was like you would take a picture of like your pizza or something, and you're like, yeah, this is a good pizza, I'm going to eat that, right? But today, it seems apps like this have this image construction, this brand of who you are and what you present. And then it seems like some of that then transitions into the dating apps, and then how one is to present themselves, and then the expectations in that regard. Do you see that as kind of a parallel?
Yeah, it's involved for sure. If you're on one of these profile-based sites, to include dating apps as well, where you know that you're going to be evaluated by whatever information you present, the most efficient way to use it is to design the profile so that you are filtering out the people you don't want to match with, right? And so, for example, I, on my dating app profiles, always put that I was Christian, right? Am I Christian? I mean, I was raised somewhat in the Christian tradition. I don't go to church or anything. But I knew that the kind of girl who would swipe left on someone for being Christian was just not the kind of girl I would probably be a good fit for. So I use that as a filtering mechanism. Now, most people aren't doing that, because most people, men especially, will struggle to get dates on the dating app. So they're going to put forward an image of something that's very non-polarizing generally, right? And that's why these profiles that you see, I mean, there's all kinds of cliches and memes that people are familiar with. That's why a lot of the dating app profiles converge on this, like, I like to watch the TV show The Office, right? Because it's very non-threatening. It's something everyone likes, you know. I'm not gonna go on there and be like, yeah, I love slasher films. I like to watch people die, right? Because that's, you know, maybe that's what you like. Maybe that's actually something important. You know, it's not my thing, but you're not gonna put that on your dating profile, right? And it's the same reason men lie about their height. It's because, you know, if you're a guy and you're 5'5", well, you need to be with a woman who's okay with that. And if you tell women you're 6'2", you're going to go on a lot of dates where they're instantly like, you know, it's not good right away. But it's like the profile that is optimized for finding your one soulmate is not the same profile that's optimized for getting the most matches possible. And people very much err towards optimizing for the latter, of course. But then there's also the issue too of you want people using a dating app, they want false positives, they don't want false negatives, right? So you go in with, I want as many matches as possible. I'm speaking more from the male perspective here. It is different for women, but you want as many matches as possible. You want to figure it out so that you're not filtering out your soulmate. You'd rather filter in a bunch of people who are not your soulmate, and then roll the dice and go on the dates and start the conversations until you find the right one.
Mm-hmm. It's almost as if, and it's very interesting when you put it in like an information theory perspective. Like, I mean, definitely part of that has to be tied to the emotional relationship that we get when we're using that UX, as you mentioned, right? The right swipe, the left swipe, the fact that you get matches that increases your sense of validation, and then that maybe increases your confidence as you're then approaching into the dating world. But obviously this, the swiping and the dating apps and everything moving online, like you said, has also created a very dynamic shift and change in the social world and the social climate, down to the online world impacting kind of the physical world. Like you mentioned, people maybe not interacting as much, right? Approaching in person, creating relationships in that way. But also there's a bit of incentive design that has changed a little bit around some of these dating apps. So I'd love to hear from you in terms of a bit of that incentive design, and maybe how you mentioned, for example, online dating clearly isn't working. So could you, elaborate a little bit about some of that incentive design in the dating apps, and maybe why people don't find as much success, or they feel super burned out in these ways?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that the dating apps, it's become very normalized, so we don't think about it and we don't compare it to the past. But I find them deeply dehumanizing. Um, when I explained to my grandchildren one day how grandpa and grandma met, I like there to be a romantic story. I like there to be, there it was just sort of this miraculous thing, and we connected immediately, and we were just so right for each other. And then you compare that to what you're doing on a dating app, and it's like a meat market. It's you're looking at, I mean, if you watch people use them, they're looking at a profile most of the time for less than a second, right? They're looking at the first picture, then they're making a judgment. And then if the first picture catches their eye, maybe they scroll, they're going to scroll, maybe, and then they're just going to like swipe right. And in places that are very, like very active dating markets like New York City, it creates this pathology that's very, very strange when you go on dates with people, where it's like, you're very much treated like a number. It's very much just like a feeling out process, and it's, people will go on more than one date per night. They'll be like, okay, Saturday is my date day. I'm getting coffee with Sandra at 1, and then I'm getting, I'm going on a walk with Sally at 4, and then I'm having drinks with someone, and I'm, we're having later drinks with someone else, maybe dinner. And it's not, it feels like interviewing for jobs at a bank or something. It's not fun. It's not romantic. I'm not committing my energy to the person right in front of me. It's like you do it so many times, you have a script, and it becomes very rote. And, if you go on a good date, hopefully you pull each other out of that mindset a little bit. But it also creates this illusion, because it's such a low information process that, like, it takes time to get to know someone. Right. And you're definitely not going to know the things you need to know to vet them as a spouse on the dating app profile. You're probably not going to figure those things out on the first date. I mean, you're definitely not going to figure them out on the first date, because there's so many of them. Some of them you won't figure out until you've dated for 6 months. Right. And they might be make or break things. But if you're expecting to, the threshold for what you need to know about someone is just so high, that if you're expecting the first date to be the point at which you gather that key information, then you're never going to be satisfied. And you're also, you also have this illusion that there's just unlimited people for you to date all the time. So it also makes it very hard to expect or to accept a good match when you find it, because you're like, oh wow, this guy's great, we connect really well, we have all these common interests, he makes me laugh, we do all these things together, he's fantastic. But what if I don't like the way his eyes are too far apart or something. So it was so easy to find him on the dating app. I'll just jump back on the dating app. There's another guy like that on there who has all those things, plus his eyes don't kind of look wonky or something. And then they do that indefinitely. I don't think I've answered your question super specifically here, but happy to go deeper.
No, I mean, you're basically outlining how some of the behavioral changes internally can happen with regards to what would you say, high velocity filtering, right? The ability to, from a user design perspective, filter so quickly between, and I mean, if you were to critique, right, if you were to argue from the other side, what one could say would be that don't these apps enable you to more quickly find what you're looking for? It's basically just like scaling factors. Technology accelerates this.
They don't let you actually filter on the things that matter to you, though, and that's the primary issue. And that's why you find people filtering on things that don't actually matter to them. So let's use height as an example, because it's the most common example. If I'm a woman, I have a laundry list of things I'm looking for in a guy, right? And those, maybe he can demonstrate a little bit of humor on his Hinge profile or in the first message he sends you, or maybe he can show that he's good with children because he has pictures with his nieces and nephews. You're not going to find that on most profiles, but those things are right there. But there's you're not going to see all of the things you care about, right? And the ratio on the apps, it's like literally 90% men. It's a little different for every app, but it's usually like 80% plus men. So what happens with the women in particular in this instance is that okay, I'm a woman. Height is somewhere on the list of the things I care about. Probably I want a guy who's taller than me. If he's exceptional, it's okay. If he's a couple inches shorter, right? That might end up not actually mattering that much. But it's incredibly easy for most women to get lots of matches on the dating apps. So they need to filter on something, right? Because if you, I don't know, if you have a female friend in a large city, go ask to see her Hinge sometime, and she will have so many unread messages that she can't even, like, she would need to hire a team of staff to like go through her messages. So what she's going to do is she's going to go, okay, well, I'm going to get so many matches no matter what. I'm going to set my bar for height really high. And now possibly she's just by definition filtered out her potential soulmate based on something she doesn't actually care that much about, because she can, and it's just what, like, you got to filter on something. So if you get a couple little filters there, you're going to use those, as opposed to on Keeper, where it's like, hey, we're going to figure out everything that matters to you, and then everything that matters is what's going to be taken into consideration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, it's almost as you mentioned, you have to pick any filter, right? And you maybe aren't even aware if that's a potential negative filter or positive filter. But you've mentioned this word a couple times, soulmate. And before we kind of transition into this idea of like matchmaking and where Keeper kind of comes in, I want you to can you sort of outline that idea for us? There's some conflicting opinions. Some people think that there is kind of the soulmate type of thing. And then there's research that also suggests, okay, maybe that's an inflated concept. So from your own perspective, what do you mean when you say those words?
Yeah, well, the way we formally define soulmate as a company is it's just somebody who is so strongly aligned and compatible with you that when you meet them and get to know them, you will want to commit to them and stay with them for the rest of your life. And it's a rare person. It's someone who is aligned with you in the short term and the long term. And the long term is the part that people have a very hard time figuring out. It's easy to tell if you guys have a fun time together. It's easy to tell if you have good physical chemistry, and if you have sort of the general like lifestyle compatibility to where you can just kind of fit together and start living your lives together in a way that makes sense and is convenient and feels natural. Those are all things that you can figure out in the short term. But relationships change over the years. And the thing that starts off as a cute personality quirk might later become something that's just like destroys your relationship because it's just intolerable and it can't be changed, and it starts manifesting in other ways. I can give specific examples. I don't know how much we want to go into my personal.
I'd love to hear, but
yeah, I had a girlfriend a couple of years ago, and we met, and she had a very we would say like a domineering personality, and I liked that at first. It was fun because I'm a little bit the same way, and we would butt heads a little bit, but it was cute and fun. And then when that dynamic started emerging, as we were talking about where we should live together and how we manage our relationships with coworkers, and it was like, oh well, actually this is not a cute thing that we clash over and laugh about. This is actually a barrier to us building a life together because we're actually just not willing to budge on certain things. And that that was a year more into the relationship, and then that was a year of my life I'm not going to get back, right? I could have been finding the person I'm actually meant to be with. So the soulmate is the short term and the long term. And I am a romantic person, right? I do think that, I think serendipity plays a huge role in life. I think that you meet the person you're meant to be with at the time you're meant to meet them. And, I think we have to will that into existence. I don't think that it happens magically. I think we need the tools to do it properly, right? Like God works through us or something. But yeah, I mean, if you want to think about it mathematically, everyone you meet is going to be a certain level of compatible with you between 0 and 1, and somewhere out there is a true 1, and there's probably only one, or very few of them, and you need to use the tools at your disposal and find the most efficient method for meeting that person.
And one of those tools historically was matchmaking, right? And I need you to keep me, I guess, accurate here, please. That the idea was someone might become this concept of a matchmaker, where maybe they were socially very attuned. They were involved in a lot of social circles. They knew a lot of people, knew a lot of single people, and sometimes people would reach out to that person and ask, do you know anybody who's single, or this kind of thing, and they would kind of facilitate, and that eventually became almost a career for certain people. And if I'm not mistaken, this was also something you kind of did a little bit of.
Well, I did it when we started Keeper. So Keeper is the AI matchmaker now. And as of this very moment, we do still have a human layer of our process. AI is doing most of the filtering because there's so many people. But then there is a human who's vetting the matches and being, okay, like let's look at the really fine details, kind of the gestalt, the just overall vibe of each person, maybe a quick phone call or a call like this, a video call to just chat a little bit and vet information and get to know you a little bit. But matchmaking historically, it worked really well in societies where people were getting married young, and the expectation was that you were going to get married. And like in ancient China, you would have an old lady who was the matchmaker, right? And everybody in this village, all the boys and all the girls, they were going to pair up and get married. And she was there to facilitate the most optimal combinations within that pool. She probably matched your parents. She might have matched your grandparents. She knows a lot about you. She's very embedded in the village. She knows everyone, right? Like she's just like the hub of the social graph, right? And that's the level of information you need to be a good matchmaker. You need to know everybody you're dealing with on like a very deep level. You need to know their idiosyncrasies, how their minds work, their values, their personalities. And to have that level of information, you can only have that level of information with a relatively small group of people. You can't know 1 million people. You can't know 1,000 people. You can hardly know 100 people, right? I know there's research on this, but at a certain point, everyone just starts to mesh together. It's there's a hard limit on the number of people that a human being can know deeply. So yes, in a society such as those, like matchmaking was very effective. Now, matchmakers are an industry today in the United States and around the world, and a lot of people aren't aware of this, but it is a thing. And where they work well are in communities where there's a strong self-selection into the matchmaking process, so that everybody is coming in with like a very strong, high level of alignment just through the door, right? So if you think about like the Jewish professionals in New York City, that is a niche where a matchmaker can be quite effective. And when I say quite effective, I mean their success rate's probably still not as high as Keeper with 1 in 10, but certainly much better than a dating app or a dating website or something. And part of the reason for that is that because they have to work with they can't work with everyone, as I've said. They have to work with a small group of people. And if the group of people is self-selecting because they probably already have a lot in common with each other, then you're starting with a pool where there are likely soulmate-ish level matches, or at least very, very strong matches to where the people are willing to get married. And so if I go out and I meet 50 men and 50 women at random, it's not likely that there's any matches in that pool that are going to be great fits for each other, just because it's too random. Now, if I have 50 male friends and 50 female friends, the odds are higher that there are going to be some good pairs in there, because those people have selected into being my friend. And if you're my friend, there's going to be certain things about you that make you able to be friends with me, and then those people are going to be somewhat similar. And if you're doing, Indian immigrants or Jewish professionals in New York City, or tech CEOs and models, and it's models who want to meet a tech CEO and tech CEOs who want to meet a model, well, those are pools where people are coming in with a very high level of similarity. So there's likely to be matches within your pool, and then you can know enough people within a small pool to where there's likely matches. But then you have a lot of these companies that are just they have poor reviews. They don't make people happy. They charge a lot of money. They certainly are successful in some cases, but they're just really trying to work with the population at large, and they produce matches that are at the level of a dating app, just as random, because they can't know you as well. And it's usually, those companies usually exist and have clients, not because they're good at matching, but because their clients are too busy to do that part themselves. So they're outsourcing it to this matchmaker, and the matchmaker will just send them a few dates a month, and then hopefully one of them sticks eventually.
So it's almost as if the matchmaker historically filled this role of like I just imagine it as the charismatic or gregarious guy or gal who's like at every party and every social gathering, who knows sort of a little bit of everybody and knows them to, maybe enough of what's going on in their life to facilitate that matching. And what you're saying is that within a variety of different cities, there's lots of different niches of sort of value aligned affiliative groups, right? Whether it's the Jewish working professionals, as you mentioned, or maybe it's like tech CEOs and models, I think that's the other one you said, but maybe it's also, people who enjoy badminton or something like that, like competitive badminton players or something like that. And this opted in values alignment allows for at least a better than random type of outcome in terms of matching. So, but then also you've outlined that there's I guess some of these other more professional matchmakers that, because they don't have that in-depth social tribal knowledge, there's a limitedness in how effective they can be. So then I guess this kind of leads to a good point where we can discuss Keeper and bring in the idea of Keeper here. So can you tell us a little bit about Keeper? You sort of mentioned it's a matchmaking service, it's AI at the moment. What does that mean when somebody signs up for Keeper? Take us through the experience, and what is the matchmaking actually doing? Why is Keeper effective in the way that it's been, to at least purported to, as you said in your statistics? And how does it fix this issue?
Yeah, so we talked about with the dating apps. The dating app will have lots of users, which is the number one thing. You need a lot of people to match people effectively, especially when you're talking about the general population, because the soulmate is a rare thing. If I don't have 100,000 women to think about matching you with, then I probably just can't help you, right? If I'm holding it to that standard where we need to find your soulmate, right? So the dating apps have lots of people, but they have the information problem. They don't know anything about you. They're not really trying to match you efficiently. It's like popping popcorn. The kernels hit each other, and then maybe they get stuck together at some point. The matchmaker has, in the best case, high information about you, but they're just not able to deal with that many people. AI can know everybody on planet Earth in great detail if it wants to, right? So the Keeper experience is, let's find out everything that we need to know about you, to know what makes you you. What are you looking for in a partner? And what are the things that are going to decide if any given potential partner is someone that you will want to spend your life with mutually? And so, like you mentioned, you mentioned badminton players, right? Maybe someone, they're like, well, I really just want to be with someone that I can go play badminton with all the time because I really love playing badminton. That's great. I mean, that's a preference. That's a very important preference, and we would capture that. We ask you, hey, what are your preferences? What are your interests? Give us all your interests. Tell us which of these interests you really want to share with a partner, and then we're going to give you open text fields to describe what you're looking for, whether it's personality or hobbies or appearance or values or religion or politics, anything you can think of. Literally anything you can think of, you can give us as a preference on Keeper, and you're able to set a priority on it. So, some things are less important to others. Some things are just like, yeah, in my ideal world, this would be a nice to have, but it's not essential. And then other things are essential. So in the analog world, if you're like, I need a girl who's going to be great at playing badminton, or, I can play badminton with, you might say, okay, well, I'm going to go to badminton clubs and tournaments, and I'm going to try to meet girls there. And that's a good strategy. It's a good strategy for the real world. But what happens if your soulmate is at the badminton club, 3 miles away and not the one you're at? Well, you can't go to every badminton club. What if she's in, 2 cities over, a 2-hour drive, and you could go, you'd be more than happy to meet her, but you're not going to meet her in person. The idea with Keeper is like, get everybody. And once you have all this, we're going to ask you lots of questions. You're going to do maybe 100 questions. You don't have to answer all of them, but we're going to ask things that no dating app is asking you. We're going to get all this information. We're going to be able to store it like top of mind, like a matchmaker would for every individual. And then once you have that data, it's just sorting, it's just algorithm, it's just filtering. And that's obviously, the bulk of what we do. And happy to go into any more detail there specifically as we might need, but it's just about capturing what are the things that actually matter for two people to be happy together, and getting that information from those people and then matching those people. It's really not rocket science, right?
How much of that last statement that you made do you feel is subjective versus objective? Is it really just a matter of matching the puzzle pieces together such that, like, you like badminton, I like badminton, we go together? Or are there constrained, objective, and universal factors that go into successful matches?
Yeah, there's so we differentiate between the preference trait matching and the trait matching. So
can you elaborate on what those mean?
For sure. So we there are cases where we will let you override like a trait to trait assumption that we have. So one of our trait to trait assumptions, we give you a personality test. We use the Big 5 personality test. We'll collect standardized test scores. We might give you an IQ test. We're going to collect information about politics, about religion. So we come in with a lot of default assumptions about those things. So if you are strongly into politics and you have strong political beliefs, then our default assumption, as would be just about anyone's default assumption, is that your partner, maybe they don't need to have the same intensity of political belief that you have, but they need to be aligned enough with you, because that's going to serve as a proxy for deeper values. And if someone's strongly into politics, then they're going to butt heads if, one person's like a Christian conservative, the other person's like a socialist, right? It'll cause issues. So that would be like a default assumption, just a simple example of something that we're taking for granted as important for matching in most situations. Now, you can also go in and say, okay, despite my strong political beliefs, I actually have a specific preference here. As long as she agrees with me on X, Y, and Z, the rest doesn't really matter, right? And you can specify that on Keeper. But our base assumption, if we don't have that additional information, is going to be that you need someone relatively well aligned with you. And you can extrapolate that to pretty much any area of life that you can imagine. Like we are starting with base assumptions about most things, like someone who doesn't drink isn't going to make a great match for someone who drinks 3 nights a week. You don't have to express a preference saying that. We're going to assume that is a negative weight on the match. Now, to be fair, if everything else looked perfect, and we're like, oh, well, okay, this is just one red flag among an overall otherwise very good match. Then there's a disambiguation step, like an LLM or a matchmaker will talk to you and they'll say, hey, I have a match I want to talk about. It looks really fantastic on all of these things. This is our one concern. Just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that and see if that's like a deal breaker for you, or if we could get a little extra resolution there. In a lot of cases, we would already have that information, but that's another example.
And so it sounds like, in a sense, it is like this in-depth questionnaire, this in-depth. And I did go through part of the experience, and I was like, oh boy, this is like a very in-depth process, like some very pointed questions about like what do you value? And I'm curious, like on one hand, I guess part of finding an ideal match is also knowing quite a little bit about yourself and your own preferences. So how do you view people in that process of figuring out what it is that they do want? Like I can imagine that there are quite a lot of people who know exactly, they're like, this is what I think I want, and this, and this. But is it part of the dating process also determining a little bit about what you don't want? And how does Keeper sit in with that? Or is it maybe a different, is it targeted at a different demographic of people for that reason?
It's targeted for anyone who is serious about finding their life partner. And when people ask me that question, it's as long as you meet that basic criteria, you're someone we would want to match, or try to match. And certainly there are people who know themselves very well, and they come in with a list of sometimes literally 30 things that they're like, okay, here are my non-negotiables, find it, right? And then there are other people who maybe don't have as strong of an idea, but everybody knows something, right? If you've never dated in your life, it can be trickier. But everyone has some idea, right, of what you're attracted to. And so as long as you can capture the fundamental parts of that, and anything that's like not a hard deal breaker, right? That's why the success rate's 1 in 10, not 1 in 1. But a lot of it will be captured just by the fundamental other types of alignment that we've talked about, values and personality and humor and lifestyle and how many kids you want and how you want to raise the kids and where you want to live and all these other things. Are you physically attracted to one another? Are you kind of on the same social wavelength or social class and all these things? Once you control for all of those things, the last layer of preferences is very important, and you do learn as you go a little bit. So you get the first match, and we do this a lot with people, especially back in the days when it was just me being a matchmaker. You do a debrief afterwards, and you try to learn iteratively from every match. It's like, okay, we went on 2 or 3 dates, we decided not to see each other again. Well, you're going to do a debrief, and it's going to be like, okay, well, what were the things that you felt were missing, or that you learned through this process that can refine our search moving forward? And that's very informative. But I think in our world now, where most people are, I don't meet many people who are just using Keeper, right? They use Keeper in addition to, they're still going to go on dates from dating apps and still, keep rolling the dice there, playing the slots. And they're learning as they go outside of our process as well.
Yeah, it's intriguing that you have a feedback loop built in, because it just sort of surfaced to me that there is no feedback loop on a dating app at the moment. There's no way to, I mean, I guess it's more of a self-directed adventure, but maybe because it's more of a self-service based experience, it's on the user of the app in order to integrate some of those learnings. So I wonder, honestly, how many times folks would ask themselves the question of like, what didn't go wrong? And I'm sure that there's plenty of people that do, but maybe a lot of the times it's less formalized in some way, but maybe having something to keep the accountability of being like, yeah, but we're still trying to work towards this goal, instead of what I guess can become that aimless spiral. And I'm curious, because you said you've done all these sort of matches. So I wanted to sort of dive into maybe some of the learnings that you've acquired. And I know you've covered a few of these topics, like, for example, the 7 deadly singles that you mentioned. So I want to list them off here, and maybe you can add any additional color of things that you've learned with these matchmakers. But you've identified 7 archetypes, which with you call them the 7 deadly signals. The first is the banker without balance, beauty with no depth, the small pond celebrity, the over-niched specialist, the flirt without foundation, awkward philosopher, and the unrooted adventurer. And you said within this article, your future partner will experience all of you, not just the curated highlight reel you show the world. So can you add like a little bit of color on, I guess, where did those archetypes come from? Have you been discovering other learnings within your exploration?
Well, yeah, I mean, tons of other learnings for sure. But the archetypes are kind of just to illustrate the point that if you're specializing your career, right, it might be smart if you're a UX designer to be the best person at designing blockchain applications, right? And it's like, I can be a little weak in other areas, but as long as I am the number one person at this very specific thing, I will always be employable and I will always be able to command a high salary, because at this one thing that people need, there's no one better than me. When you're in a relationship with someone, sure, they want you to be financially secure. They want you to be interesting. They want you to be intelligent. But those are thresholds for people, and you have to pass every threshold to have that person want to be with you. If they're a match for you on those things. So if you're a banker and you're a workaholic, you're working all the time, and you make more than $1 million a year, that's great, right? It's great. And a lot of times those people, if they're having trouble dating, what they'll do is that it'll be a woman actually would prefer, it's great that you make a lot of money. She would be okay if you made a little less money and you had more time to spend with her, right? But what people will think is that, oh, well, I'm having trouble dating. I make all this money. I need to make more money. That's what it is, right? So I'm going to double down on the thing where I already passed the threshold. And so being, it's a lot of times in categories like this, it's easier to go from 20% to 80%, where maybe the threshold is for your potential partner, than it is to go from 95% to 100%. And on the metric where we're talking about 95 to 100%, you already crossed the 80% threshold. So if the answer might be something, it's probably an area of your life that you're ignoring. You don't need to double down on the thing you're already good at, because being marginally better at the thing you're already good at isn't going to make up for all of these other deficiencies that are very easy to fix, right? Maybe think about fixing your diet before you think about making a marginal 100K a year on your already massive salary.
Mm-hmm. It's almost as if perhaps there's a differential or a disalignment between the incentives, and this is maybe a broader critique around how we identify ourselves in the world with our like roles as jobs, for example. But there's sort of a disalignment between getting much better and better and better at one thing versus needing to be a well-rounded individual for the partner you're seeking.
Yeah, I don't mean to harp on this money example, because it's there's 7 deadly singles, and really this manifests in all types of ways. Like the article is a simplification, of course, but yeah, I mean it really is as simple as just being a well-rounded person. Being if someone's going to see every side of you, having a life and a personality and a behavior set that that other person wants to integrate their life with, and I think it's just healthy advice in general.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And now with Keeper, well, previously in the conversation, you mentioned this historic way that people would meet each other. And it brought to mind this concept to me called the third space, right? This idea of, I think it was an article written recently. It was talking about the loss of third spaces in New York. And from my recollection of the article, it was saying that a third space is basically somewhere between work and home. It was, essentially a community that you would find yourself in. And that I would assume would be a place that you could meet these potential matches and partners in that way. But I guess the loss of a lot of those communities has been resulting in this increasing trend that we hear about loneliness. And I'd love to hear from you about, I guess the positioning of Keeper you have here. You sort of position it as trying to end this loneliness. So could you speak a little bit about that and why maybe tackling the love angle is so important from that aspect?
Yeah, I think a big part of the reason it's happened is that in a non-digital world, in a less connected world, you still had a need for socialization, and you wanted to be surrounded by relatively like-minded people, and the way to find that was probably a local space, right? Whether it's the social club like the VFW or those places, or it's just the bar down the street, or a coffee shop, or a club for planting flowers. You used to have all these clubs and associative groups where people would join and they would do things together, and it was selecting for certain personality types and traits, and it was a great place to meet a potential spouse. Now those places are online because your interests are very niche, right? If I am really into collecting Pokemon cards, there's not going to be a Pokemon convention in my city every week, but there is an online group and a Discord where I can go and we can talk about the most specific nuanced elements of collecting Pokemon cards every single day, right? So my socialization is moving into those places, and that's not really grounds for meeting a spouse, right? I mean, certainly people do meet in those types of places. It's not just collecting Pokemon cards; it's anything. Everyone's a member of some kind of community online, whether it's Reddit or whatever. But you're not. It's not physical. It's not real. It's not the being next to people and talking and smelling each other is a very important part of vetting a spouse, right? So actually, I kind of forget what the original question was, but it's a lot of social trends coalescing to where people still want to get married on the level that they always have. They don't have these generational social groups like churches and family communities and local communities that stay together for a long time like we used to. People move away from home at a young age to go to college, then they move somewhere else. You have several different social circles over the course of your life, some of them real, some of them online, and you're constantly breaking ties with your old groups. Maybe you stay in friends with people from high school or whatever, but you're not embedded in a community like you used to be. And it's atomizing, it's alienating. People spend more time inside. People don't go out as much as they used to, and it's for a number of reasons. But people still want to get married. If you look at survey data, it's people still want to start families. It's at the level it's always been. Like the desire to do that has not actually left. And people argue that it has, and they don't know what they're talking about. They'll say, "Oh, well, young people just don't want to get married." And it's like, well, I mean, certainly maybe few of them want to sign a contract that says we are married now in the eyes of the state. Maybe some fewer number want to do that, but they still want to spend their life with a committed partner who they take care of and they build a legacy with together. Everyone still wants that. And the mechanism for doing that has been replaced. Like I said earlier, like the online is how you're expecting to meet that person. It's completely inefficient. It's just a random number generator. Let's go on a date. Let's go on a date. I don't know anything about you. Let's go on a date. At the badminton club, you could at least start a conversation and make a joke together, or see that you work together well as a duo pair, right? And that would be a great filtering mechanism. You don't have that on a dating app. You don't have anything like that. So that's why when you look at the other statistics, like fewer people are in relationships. Like every loneliness epidemic, there's a reason it's an epidemic. It has serious health consequences. It has serious societal consequences. Would you rather live in a neighborhood where everyone lives on their own in an apartment, or where everyone lives with their family and they're out with the kids and there's happy kids running around and they're playing games in the street? Like, those are happy societies to live in. An atomized society where everyone's chilling on their own on the computer, that's no fun. Those aren't nice places to live. And so it's there are a lot of upstream issues that have led us to this point. You can't undo those changes. But a lot of those kind of loop back to where if it's like you say, we're losing third spaces. Well, who needs third spaces by default is children. Children need playgrounds, right? So if you have more people starting families and those families live in a neighborhood and now there's a playground in the neighborhood, well, now parents are taking their kid to the playground and they're meeting other parents. There's your third space. So a lot of the societal issues that cause this problem, solving this problem with technology will loop around and fix those societal issues. And then there are other downstream issues that are fixed. The number one just being human happiness.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds as if, and you mentioned this word, it's a lot of different trends coalescing into essentially shuffling many people into different avenues. And you mentioned, for example, like a dating app is kind of random. I mean, technically meeting anywhere is random, but at least if you have that affiliative trait or that affiliative interest, right, there's at least some similarity versus filtering on a couple of like pictures and a 50-line bio. But you focused a lot on this idea of marriage, and I guess, is Keeper philosophically aligned to that idea of marriage, or is it also aligned to just long-term partnerships if people don't want to have that type of commitment to that level? And then, moreover, wouldn't people also argue that dating apps have freed to open up a variety of different relationship variants or types or things like that? Like some people feel happy being single, but maybe that's not the target demographic for something like Keeper.
Yeah, I mean, as far as marriage, I use the term marriage, I guess a little bit loosely, right? Like to me, if you have been with the same partner for 20 years and you're exclusive together and you live together and maybe you have children, you are functionally married, right? Whether you've gone to the courthouse and signed a document, right? You are married, you're in a committed long-term relationship. To me, marriage is, when I use that term, that is to encompass any relationship that is intended to be a forever relationship. And however you codify that, most people are going to, have a ceremony and get married, but if you don't, it does not matter to me. Right. And so the people we are serving and the people we are matching are people who are looking for that type of relationship. Right. And certainly some people do want to be single and they do want to play the field. Right. And those people are well served by dating apps, right? That's what a dating app is for. It's if I want to go on a date tonight and a date tomorrow night and a date the following night, I can download Hinge right now and I can do that. One of the big problems with the dating apps, though, is that they don't filter on intentionality. And the reason that there's this saying that any app that is not explicitly a relationship app will degenerate into a hookup app. And the reason is that you have, I don't want to go too deep into like evolutionary psychology, but men are wired to seek novelty in relationships and sex, right? And one of the big frustrations women have, men too a little bit, but mostly women with dating apps, is that the men's intentions are unclear. So if you're a man and your goal is to sleep with a lot of women, on a dating app, your optimal strategy is to not say that, right? If you go on a dating app, I mean, there's a reason Grindr works for gay people and not for straight men, right? And it's because on the dating app, if your motivation is I want to sleep with lots of women, the optimal strategy is to say that you're looking for a relationship, right? So women don't want to go on dates. If a woman's looking for a serious relationship, she doesn't want to go on dates with guys who are just looking to hook up with her. But the dating app is not making that distinction, and it's not vetting him at all for that. And so the most active male users on a dating app are going to be the ones seeking novelty, seeking to go on lots of dates, seeking to sleep with lots of women, and they're going to hide their intentions to do those things. And that leaves the women feeling hurt and used, and it's a very bad experience. And I mean, it's just harmful to everyone for a number of reasons, including the men who are doing that. But that's kind of the key reason why, like, if we get a man on our app who is detected doing that kind of thing, he will just be banned. But it's also set up to disincentivize that just by design, because we're going to ask you a lot of questions about yourself, and you're going to have to tell us a good bit through those questions, or we're just not going to have enough information to match you. And so it's like, if all you want to do is go on dates with people, then you're not going to flock to Keeper. You're not going to say, oh, Keeper's the thing for me, because we're going to make you do a lot of work, and then you're not going to get as many matches. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a sort of tight phrase, this idea that, like, without an explicit emphasis on intention, things kind of just evolve into, basically hookups, and maybe, like you said, maybe one of the challenges is that some of these apps have such a significant user base that it's the de facto, right? It's the same way with like a social network. You're like, why would you go to a different social network if this one has all the people that on it? But I suppose, like, wrapping up as we get to kind of the ending of this conversation, what kind of success has Keeper seen with some of the matches? I mean, you've mentioned this, like, 1 in 10. You've cited lots of different spouses and things coming together. So what can we expect a little bit in the future, and how have things been panning out thus far?
Yeah, so we have a couple of exciting launches coming up. I don't want to give an exact date yet, but this summer we are releasing version 2 of our user experience. It's very beautiful. It's very, very fluid and user friendly, and you come on and it's very clear what you have to do next, and we give you transparency into our pool. It'll say, we have this many potential matches for you. We have, of that group, we have this many we just know are not good matches. We have a few thousand here that we need to know more about you. And then your goal is to kind of narrow it down until we get to a very small number. And then we can decide, who the best match is, and if that best match is worth offering to you. And you'll be able to, mess with all your parameters and your information right there, and give us the information we need. So yeah, the success rate is 1 in 10. If we send you on a first date, it's like a 1 in 10 chance you end up in a committed long-term relationship, which we define as like you're together for 18 months, or you move in together, or you're engaged and you're getting married. That's how we count that. And that rate, I think most people hear that and they're like, oh, that's really good. That's orders of magnitude better than anything else has ever had, any product in this space, including human matchmakers, right? And then for right now, there is still that kind of final human layer of there is a human in the process. Later this year, we will be able to fully extract the human from the process. The AI will be as efficient or better in its totality. I mean, it's already like most of the way there to where it can show us maybe like the best few, and we can differentiate. But once it's able to cover kind of that very last mile, that human bottleneck, which is the biggest bottleneck in the process right now, is completely removed. It can just match at light speed, literally. It just match everybody right away. And that's the next big launch we have coming up that we're very excited about.
Mm-hmm. One final question I have, which is, we mentioned some of these human factors falling away from society, and it seems like a lot of times the answer is more technology, adding more technology. What would you kind of, I guess, say the difference then from Keeper's perspective is? Like, how is Keeper cultivating, or at least conserving or amplifying some of that human factor, versus a lot of times adding more technology to kind of solve the downstream perhaps issues created in some senses by the technology? Is it the fact that it has that personal touch still? Because you mentioned sort of moving the human from the loop, so I'm just curious to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, it's almost like the only way out is through. I have this sort of broader philosophical idea that screens are bad, and the
the physical,
yeah, it's like, I think what happens is screens are bad because screens absorb your attention and they take your attention away from the immediate physical world around you. And what you pay attention to is the thing that you're going to want to improve and be very mindful of. So the more that you're sucked into a screen, on a societal level, the more everyone's sucked into a screen, the less the meat space is going to be maintained and cared for and taken care of, and the less people are going to say hi to each other on the streets. All these things, you're sucked into the screen. Well, people are addicted to the screens. Can we get them off the screens by telling them screens are bad? No, because they need to do everything on their life on the screen. So probably the way that problem gets fixed is with AI or whatever it is that allows you to handle those parts of your life very quickly and very efficiently without using a screen. So if I can have, if I could just, have something in my home where I talk to it and I say, hey, I need to book a flight tomorrow to St. Louis. And it goes, okay, here's the best option. What seat do you want? Right. And if I could just do it like that by talking out loud, now I don't need to spend 20 minutes on a screen to get that done. Right. So the dating app is a time suck. Like you said, people are spending an hour a day on dating apps. It's like a part-time job. They could be making money with that time. They could be enjoying, hobbies or any number of things. They could be doing woodworking, right? But instead, they're on the dating app. So the point is to get you off the dating app, right? The point is to get you off of Keeper. Hinge says it's still designed to be deleted, but is it? Because if it was, then they could be doing a lot more to get to know you and actually match you efficiently. No, the total incentive of any dating app that profits by keeping people on a subscription is to keep people using the app, right? Our payment models are incentive aligned. You pay when you go on a great first date. You pay maybe when you get married, depending on how it's set up. Maybe it's, you've joined for free and you're just a free member in our pool. But the point is to get you to stop using it. And if you look at any dating app and the way they make money is by you using the app, well, then of course they don't want you to, get in a relationship. The day they want you to get in a relationship is one day before you get so frustrated with the app that you delete it from your phone, because that's how they maximize the profit from you, right? So I think technology can only be the answer, because technology is in some cases the cause of the problem. It has to be the solution. Because people just won't abandon it. It's the cat. What do they say? You can't put the shit back in the donkey. Yeah.
I guess that's a version of it too.
That's the one I've heard. Yeah. The toothpaste back in the tube. That's probably better for the podcast.
Amazing. Well, Wes, thank you so much for taking your time today to give us a little bit of perspective on both dating, some of the trials of, it's interesting. I read a book a while ago. I can't remember the author, but the title was just Dating. And it said, dating is probably one of the most deeply human experiences because it gives you such an intimate experience to the idiosyncrasies and deep level of difference of human beings, right? You get exposed to so much intriguing elements. And if you've ever been on, many first dates, it's fascinating how wide variety the world can be. So this one is definitely, hopefully going to help all the people out there to see different ways to think about dating, and maybe the de facto of meeting online isn't necessarily the thing you have to do. And I think some people are seeing that as well. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with as we just prepare to wrap up and sign off?
If you're single, we'd love to have you. Keeper.ai is the website. Keeper.ai. Keeper is the AI matchmaker. No, you can, if people have questions about anything, I'm very responsive to emails. I'm Wes at Keeper.ai. If anyone, if I sparked an interesting thought here, I tried not to go too deep on any one thing, but always happy to talk more. And then, no, I really appreciate you having me on. It's been great. And, it's great to talk to the world.
Amazing. Well, Wes, thank you so much. And for all the listeners here, you can subscribe and review this podcast on all the typical venues, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is that you consume your podcast feed. And I would really appreciate if you leave a review. It helps me in bringing on different guests to talk about all these different ideas that surround us in the world. So with that being said, thank you again, Wes, and we'll catch you all next time.